As many of you know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and this morning we are hearing from April Simpkins. She's the mother of former USA and Extra correspondent Cheslie Kryst. Cheslie died by suicide in January. She was 30 years old. Her family says that she had suffered from severe depression for years. And please note, we have to tell you ahead of time, the subject matter of this conversation may be difficult for some viewers, but we're very glad that April Simpkins is here this morning. Please know how glad we are to see you and to have this conversation. You know, to those of us who knew and loved Cheslie, you know, I see her as so vibrant, that lion mane of hair. She was so confident and so beautiful. And I think for so many of us, it was such a shock and a surprise. But I like the point that we need to make today, that people don't understand that depression comes in many forms. There isn't a one-size-fits-all. And I think many people think, April, you're in the fetal position, you're walking around in your sweatpants, you look a mess, you sound a mess, and that is not always the case.
That is very true. Even in the case with Cheslie, she was bubbly and lively.
Yes.
And when she came in through the front door, it felt like an announcement.
Yes.
All of my other children would come through the front door very quietly and hit the kitchen and might say hello, but she would throw that door open and say, "Hi, Mom."
Mm-hmm.
Depression doesn't always look like someone is sad or burdened. Mm-hmm. It is something that, for Cheslie, she learned to live with.
Mm-hmm.
We're so glad you're here because it's an important conversation and because we know you're still going through a grieving process here. Could you talk a little bit about what that process has been like?
Difficult.
Yeah.
I've never lost someone so close to me, so I don't know what grief should look like.
Cheslie told me you were her best friend. It's not just a daughter.
That's correct.
You were her best friend.
That's correct. And there are moments when grief hits me very hard. And many times it's in the morning, because that was how we started our day, talking together, FaceTiming. And one of the things Cheslie and I talked about after her first attempt was starting every day off with gratitude.
When was her first attempt? She was 30 when she was...
It was many years ago.
Many years ago.
She was in her 20s. Mm-hmm. And so when we would start our calls in the morning, it was gratitude and what we were looking forward to that day. And that, for her, was very helpful. And so now in the mornings, to not have that makes the mornings very hard, even for me. Mm-hmm. The shower became my best friend.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
where I can grieve the best. The warm water feels comforting. I've stood in my shower and wept and cried and screamed and dropped to the floor.
But April, had you been worried about her? You said that there had been an attempt in her 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Now she was 30. Yeah, of course, we didn't know that.
Yes.
You, of course, did. Had you been worried about her?
You know, I lived in two worlds. I loved her dearly and deeply, but the other world was knowing that she was struggling with depression. And she and I had very intimate conversations about what she needs from me for support, and she did have a support group.
Yes.
And so I gave her what she needed from me, and Cheslie took from everyone what she needed from them. A hug, a smile, a kind word. She got what she needed. And so while it didn't plague me, it was always there in my mind, I knew to do the things that she required of me as someone who was part of her support, but also her mom and her best friend.
Yeah, she also gave to people what they needed.
Yes.
100%.
On a daily basis. You've been going to grief counseling. For those who might be dealing with something like this, would you encourage them to go? And then also, what have you taken away from those sessions?
Thank you. I would absolutely encourage anyone to specifically see a grief counselor. I have a counselor that I've worked with for many years, but David and I have also been talking with the grief counselor. To lose someone so suddenly feels like they were snatched, she was snatched from my life. I don't know how to grieve that way. I've never had to before, so I don't know what it looks like. And talking with someone to find out that what I'm feeling, what I'm doing is normal and it is healthy. Feeling what I feel is normal and healthy. And some days I feel great. I feel like I'm April again.
Yeah.
And other days I don't feel like myself. I'll think I'm okay, and then I'll realize that, you know, my hair's been matted for 2 days and I need to just take care of myself. And I realize in those moments I'm not okay. And that's okay, to not be okay in those moments.
It seems like people that knew Cheslie immediately thought about the great memories.
Yeah.
I have a ton of them. You know, I've worked with her closely. But for you, what are some memories that come to mind that help you deal?
Oh. Cheslie and I spent a lot of time together. The trip that we took to Turks and Caicos last year was just everything. Because we both just had a chance to have fun. Many times when I would travel with Cheslie, it was for work. Either her work as Miss USA or something that was related to what I was doing. But at Turks and Caicos, we just hung out. We built sandcastles. We walked on the beach. We had breakfast. We shopped. That is one of my favorite memories of her.
I miss her laugh.
Yes.
Yes.
Her laugh
Yes.
would light up the room.
Miss her laugh, just her
like her
voice, her take on life, the way that she thought about things. And I learned later that she was a high-functioning depression. She was high-functioning and a very depressed person that we didn't know. Is there a way that, you know, because we don't dwell on what we miss, what we could have done, but is it something that should be shared so that people could reach out and help? What is the right thing to do in this situation? Because I really struggled after, but I found some comfort now in knowing that this was something that she had talked about, that she had talked with you about. And I was still struggling with it, April. What is the answer? I don't know.
Yeah. I will say this about Cheslie. She was a very strong woman.
Yes.
And what she needed, she sought and she received. Everyone isn't, you know, we're not saviors. You may not be the person she needed counsel about her depression from, but what you did provide her, she needed. Someone to talk to, mentor her.
That's good.
A coworker who smiled at her and gave her a kind word, laughed with her. She took what she needed. And I hope that people who knew her and loved her will find comfort in knowing that you did your part.
And you know you gave her what she needed,
Absolutely.
too. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so sometimes in that, I find comfort in knowing how strong of a woman she was.
She was.
And that she sought what she needed when she needed it in every area of her life. So there wasn't really something to see. If she didn't want you to see it, you weren't going to see it.
Do you think she put on the face?
Yes.
She did.
Yes. And there was, you know, there was laughter she needed. And sometimes when someone finds out that you have something like depression or severe depression, they treat you differently. They treat you with kid gloves.
Yes.
And that
And you
wasn't
don't
what she
want that
needed.
either.
Good point.
What is most helpful to you during this time? What is the most, and I know it isn't one size fits all, too. I think we should make that clear. It's different things for different people. You know, the Wynonna Judd said something interesting the other day after her own mother's death. She said, it's so hard to be blessed and broken in the same place. And I wonder what would be most helpful, what is most helpful?
And how can we honor Cheslie?
Oh. Cheslie, you know, she left a legacy of kindness, of advocacy, of helping and supporting others. And it's in those acts that I see her. And so I've just been asking so many people, advocate, be kind. Those are ways that I know Cheslie has impacted someone enough that they are doing something to honor her. That means everything.
Wow, thank you.
Well, it means everything to us for you to come today.
Thank you.
It really does.
It really does.
Thank you.
It really
Such an
does.
important conversation.
Thinking of you, thinking of her, thinking of Dave and your family and other children, your other children, too.
Yes.
You're still a mom
Yeah.
mom to many people. If you or someone you know is seeking mental health resources, you can call the National Alliance on Mental Illness. There's a helpline, and the number is 1-800-950-6264. Say it again, 1-800-950-6264. In a crisis, please text NAMI to 741-741. Coming up, we'll talk to a clinical psychiatrist, Dr. Sue Varma.
We're continuing our conversation about former Miss USA and extra correspondent Cheslie Kryst's struggle with severe depression. She died by suicide in January. You just heard from her mother, April Simpkins. We are now joined by board-certified psychiatrist Dr. Sue Varma, and we should note that she never treated Kryst. You know, I want to tap back into something that April said. She mentioned living with the sadness. What did you think of when you heard those words?
I think takes great courage to live in sadness, and I'm a believer that grief and gratitude can coexist. I think a lot of times people expect you either to move on or to be living on the floor in your sweatpants and grieving, and I think it looks very different for different people. And to be able to sit with pain, to me, that is one of the greatest hallmarks of emotional maturity, to say, this is where I am right now. I'm taken over by a wave of sadness, and I'm going to live with it. And I know that this sadness will lift, and I will have brighter moments as well.
April also said something very interesting about people thinking they're saviors, right? So many people cared about Cheslie and would have wanted to do something, but Cheslie didn't reach out. And she's sort of freeing people, April is, by saying, look, if she didn't reach out to you, she was getting that support somewhere else. I think it's really important for people to understand. It's about where you draw the line between one's responsibility and what to do, what they could have done.
Yes, yes.
And information that should be shared. You know, is it something that should be shared?
You know, ideally, you know, it's a back and forth conversation to say, I'm really concerned about you, I'm worried about you, you look amazing, but I imagine that you have told me sometimes that this is hard for you, that you're struggling. What's going on for you inside? I think it's so hard because we want to be perceived as women who can have it all, so to speak, but what's the price? You know, this whole idea of high functioning depression typically isn't high functioning. Depression has people on the floor in the sweatpants, not getting up, not taking care of themselves, not grooming. That's the hallmark of it. And so we're really thrown off when we have somebody who is perfectly put together and saying all the right things and smiling at us, and you're like, there's no way I would have ever seen this.
So how do you check in with somebody? Because what's so
But I like the
scary
point
is-
you made, though, Tony, about savior. Can you follow up? I want to know what that means. When April said you can't be a savior.
Yes, and look, I have the utmost respect for everybody here, and I know that when you're a high-achieving person who's used to being a mentor and being a support system in the community and being a role model, you can look back and say, what did I do wrong? And I think it's really important what April said is you didn't do anything wrong. You were available. This person knew that you existed. They knew that they could call you at any time. But it's us that puts the blame that I could have done something. It's that Monday morning quarterback. It's part of grieving is to say, could I have, should I have, what could have been different? One split second, one phone call, could something have been different? That's what that savior complex, and sometimes it's about guilt. I mean, it's about guilt, survivor guilt also. Why am I here? Why are they not here? What's wrong with this picture?
How would someone know that they either need to reach out to an individual that might be struggling with depression, or how would that individual who is waking up and they're not understanding the space that they're in, and they're not understanding that they could be depressed? How do they know that they need to reach out to somebody?
Yes. So if you find that you're having a persistently low mood, so in high-functioning depression, what's different is that it doesn't have the clear, nice, discrete episodes that major depressive disorder has, where it's like 2 weeks or 4 weeks. In high-functioning depression, it's also called persistent depressive disorder, where it's like a chronic low level of what we call dysthymia. It's a low mood, and you're still functioning. But if you're having this low mood that doesn't go away, and you say that I don't have pleasure in the things that I once used to enjoy, or if me getting put together and showing up in the world is exhausting. Like if I had to go to lunch with Gayle and then I come home and I sleep for 5 days because I was like, oh my God, it was great, but I'm depressed. Like that took everything out of me. And then checking in with people to say, I know you're doing so much. Like you're on this show, you're on that show. Like, are you taking time for yourself? No, really. Like, what does that look like? What does your self-care look like? Therapy, mental health treatment, for all of us, should be a part of our self-care, even from a preventative point of view. Like, that's so foreign to us that we would go for an annual screening for a mental health checkup, but it really should be a part of it, and it is. Asking people 2 simple questions. Have you felt depressed lately? Are you feeling down? And are you getting pleasure out of the things you once used to enjoy? So that should be something doctors should be asking, and we should be asking each other. Are you still, is this fun for you, or is this a lot for you?
My primary care doctor did the last checkup, and I was impressed. I was like, oh, this is new,
Awesome.
and I like it.
Yes. Yes, 2 questions can save a person's life.
Being that I work with Cheslie Kryst for so long, I've struggled with the reality, coming to grips with what happened and what I should have or should not have done. This show has been healing to me. So I want to thank CBS Mornings and also April Simpkins for coming and sitting down, because that was not easy. And thank you, Dr. Sue Varma. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Again, if you or someone you know is seeking mental health resources, you can call the National Alliance on Mental Illness helpline at 1-800-950-6264. In a crisis, text NAMI to 741, 741. That is NAMI 741 741.